Ricardo, before I went, I was saying to you, what do you wish people better understood about what fathers may also be experiencing? Were there parts of your own grief, even now, that you've kept to yourself? Because not only are you trying to protect or support your wife, but I feel like sometimes men feel like this is what society expects from me, and this is what I have to do.
No, you're correct, and I think that's one of the problems. The reality is, as I said before we went out for the break, that we also experience, grief, loss, and confusion, and so it's absolutely important for us to, get it out there. I'll be honest, and I'm sorry that I keep on saying this, but we have to just call it as it is. Sometimes, even though I wrote this book, the reality is some things I've kept to myself as well, and sometimes there is guilt, and I tend to, probably blame myself. And this may be the first time my wife is hearing this, who is tuning, but the reality is sometimes, there are so many things that you, as a man, you may think that perhaps if you did this or if you did that, things would have been different. But the reality is, when you finally have a community, of people who, you can talk to, people who are always there to encourage you and to help you throughout this process, it makes it a lot easier. So, for one, it's to just understand that men do need to grieve. And for men, it's to just understand that we don't always have to be strong. We don't always have to stand up and pretend like, none of it mattered.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I was actually watching something that addressed this issue. And one of the interesting things for me was the way in which the father kept putting the needs of the mother ahead of himself. And even when friends were saying, "Are you okay?" he was saying, "Once she's okay, I'm okay." At one point, he almost isolated himself because he felt like her family and friends were better able to walk her through the grief process than he could ever be able. And I thought to myself, I wonder, that's what I kept watching, I wonder if he's ever going to allow her to also help him come through the process. Like there's a feeling that she's grieving, so I don't want to put this on her. She shouldn't have to think about helping me. But is that important as a couple, that both people understand that you're both grieving, both going through this, and that you're both there for each other?
No, it's absolutely important, and I believe that reduces burnout, because when you have one partner, giving, at some point in time, there's not going to be anything to give. And so it's absolutely important for both persons to support each other, to check in, to find out, how are you feeling today? What happened, last evening? Was there a trigger, to talk about it? Because otherwise what you will find is that you may very well have a situation where mental breakdown come into play. So, it's absolutely important for both persons to be there for each other.
Yeah, I've had friends and who are couples, and they've been through this process. As I said, grief is different, and I feel everybody should have the right to express themselves in a way that best helps them to cope. And people have different things. Like I have friends who have just kept it quiet to themselves. You'd almost think, okay, it never happened. And then there are others who will celebrate milestones like birthdays and other occasions to say, this was my child that was here. The month since your loss, there's been Child Month, there's been Father's Day. How do you grieve not just the loss, but also, the future and the milestones that you had already begin to imagine? This is where your family would be.
There was also Mother's Day as well. As you said, Child's Month, Father's Day.
Yeah.
And I remember a situation where my wife actually called me, and she was sharing with me some photos of some of the children, because she's a teacher, right? So she teaches, and she's an early childhood educator. And one of the things she said was that at that time, it broke her, because then, looking at so many beautiful children and, just just reflecting on what happened and knowing that, perhaps if that did not happen, maybe one day, your daughter would be there. Mm-hmm. So it was difficult. But, one of the things, Data, is moving forward, right? I think it's important that we support each other in moving forward. And moving forward doesn't mean moving on and forgetting. It's about just learning to carry grief with gratitude, and also to, just to recognize that, though, your child or your baby may not be here, the reality that he or she will always be in your heart.
Mm-hmm. Was the writing a part of the grief process? At what point did the writing enter the picture? And when did you realize that, this is an experience that I want to turn into our little mommy? Did it start off as journaling, or was it always about writing this book?
So, as I said, when we started, this is my second book, right? Mm-hmm. And I felt that there was so many things that were happening that I started journaling, right? And there was a time that, my wife and I, we discussed, what we wanted to do, with, what I have here. And both of us agreed that, we could put it in a book. Mm. It did not happen during the process, but as we got, better, then, I started to take it up more seriously.
What's been the feedback like since you've published the book?
It has been great. It has been great. It is recently published, mm-hmm. by the way. I believe it was published like a month now, so it mm-hmm. has not been out there a lot. Mm-hmm. So it is out on Amazon platforms. It should be on other platforms in the coming weeks, Barnes and Nobles and a lot of other platforms where persons can access it. But there are also books that are in Jamaica. My wife has copies, and for the persons who have actually bought it and read it, the feedback has been really good, and I'm really happy for that.
What's the most interesting thing that you've heard about the book? I mean, sometimes we create art, and in our minds, this is what it's going to do. But then when people receive it, they say, do you know what this did? Or do you know what I got from this? What are some of the most interesting things that you've received from persons who have had a read of this book?
So two things stand out to me. Usually men don't easily cry, right? Mm-hmm. Or at least that's what we want the world
Not
to
for
think.
people to be able to see.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I remember there was a friend of mine who actually bought it, and he actually responded that it was a really good book, and he actually shed a tear. And when he said that, I smiled and I said, the reality is, if a man can read this and shed a tear, it means that he too would have probably experienced the emotions that I would have experienced. Mm-hmm. And that is something, because the book actually connects. It does, right? And then there was another friend of mine who recently, lost her mother, and to hear how this book actually encouraged her throughout the process, that was something that, I really take seriously. And it's just going forward, just to trying to encourage and to inspire others, to let them know that, listen, you're not alone. Others are out there. In fact, there is a community of people who probably have gone through the same thing, mm-hmm. right? There are resources. It's just for persons to tap into it.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you said what you said, because whereas this conversation is centered around pregnancy loss, I find that we just in general don't appreciate the grief process in our men. And our expectation of them all the time is to be the strong one, be the one that is carrying the family. And ladies, I'm saying, ladies, let me tell you, sometimes the cue comes from us. We say things and we do things. We have to become more aware that sometimes we don't allow men to grieve by the things that we also say and do. And listen, they have a heart as much as we have one. And they're going through the things that we're going through. So, Ricardo, I feel like this was such an important conversation to have on this Monday. because there are quite a few men out there, and sometimes a customer say, you see, I want this in calling, and that's not even it. It's the hiding of the emotion that seems cold to us, but we don't understand. Say, true, no one we know, so not go through it. One of those all our meds
So
elsewhere.
So true.
So where do we? You said it's going to be available on all platforms. I'm intrigued by the name, Our Little Mommy. Why Our Little Mommy?
So, when we found out that we were going to have a daughter, my wife, she casually called our baby Our Little Mommy. And that's the name that we knew her by. And up until the time of, the miscarriage, that's what we call her. So, yeah, it's about Our Little Mommy.
Our Little Mommy. A blessing. Ricardo. Yes. Thank you so much for not just sharing with us, but documenting and sharing. I'm sure it is going to bring some healing and some understanding to a lot of people. And so, bless you for doing this and for speaking with us this afternoon.
Sure. Thank you. And thank you for having me. And all the best.
Yeah. Say hi to your wife for us.
I will. Thank you.
Hi, Ricardo Williams, author of Our Little Mommy. This is the Two Live Crew. Important conversation, Johnny?
Very important conversation, and one that is necessary. We need to talk about these things some more. And I'm happy that he decided to take the time, and obviously his wife agreed with him to expose that. That's so brave. I really applaud him for doing that, because so many of us would think, no, this is something we don't want to share, and it's so personal, exactly. So, yeah, and these things connect with people. I know I have friends daily who've been through that. There are popular people out there that we know that's been through that.
Yeah, man.
Very, very powerful conversation.
All right.
Yeah.
This is 94.5.